Tonight on Insights on PBS Hawaii. What is happening to Hawaii's middle class as it's confronted by higher food and housing costs, a challenged public school system, and few professional opportunities in a tourist-driven economy? Is Hawaii losing its middle class? Now, live in our studio, our host, Malia Maddock.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. What is considered middle class? A recent Pew Research Center survey reports that the average annual household income nationally is $70,000 for a family of four. But in Hawaii, that family needs to earn $86,000 to hit the median benchmark and pay painfully high prices for housing, gas, and just basic necessities. Of course, a record high cost of living is nothing new for the islands, but our sluggish economic recovery and the arrival of one big box retailer after another has hit our middle class where it has always been strong as independent small business owners. Add to the mix the perception among some Hawaii households that paying for a private education for their children is a necessary financial hardship, and it's no wonder people are asking, is Hawaii losing its middle class? You can join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. The contact information you now see on your screen will be repeated throughout the program. Insights is also streaming live on your computer and will be posted on our website after the broadcast. The live stream is closed captioned, just like our broadcasts. Now to our panel. Deborah Louie Anderson is the owner of Morning Brew Coffee House and Bistro, which was established in 1995 and is located in my hometown of Kailua, Oahu. With the start of her family, she and her husband Peter saw the need to bring in additional revenue. Debbie is a part-time realtor with Distinctive Homes Hawaii and also a partner in a small farm project in Kunia called Kunia Loa Ridge Farmlands, an ownership co-op for small farms and other agricultural-related activities. Karen Ginoza serves as a board director with the nonprofit Faith Action for Community Equity. She is also co-chair of FACE's Education Task Force, which published a report listening to teachers this year. Karen is a retired public school teacher with the Hawaii Department of Education and taught for 40 years. She also served as president of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. A. Cam Napier has been Honolulu Magazine's editor since 2005. Honolulu Magazine is the oldest magazine in the state, featuring stories that celebrate the unique culture, heritage, and lifestyle of the islands. And for more than a decade, Honolulu Magazine has published an annual rating of Hawaii's public schools. Sumner LaCroix is an economics professor and Uhiro Research Fellow at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. His research focuses on the economic history, development, and the current state of economies in the Asia-Pacific region, with an emphasis on issues pertaining to institutional change, property rights, and organization and regulation of industry. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is such an interesting topic, and I think we've all been trying to figure out, how do you define the middle class? Sumner, can you start with an economic viewpoint on this?
Well, the economic viewpoint, we often look at the median household income. And then typically we look at households that earn, say, 50% more, households that earn, say, 50% less. The median household income in Hawaii, not so much for a family of four or anything, is about $63,000. If we took 50% less, we're down to about 32. If we took 50% more, we're up to about 94. If you want to adjust that for family size, you get a little bit bigger numbers, but that's often what we're looking at. We're looking at the number of people that are within that range.
What about a non-monetary definition of the middle class? Any perception of what that might be, Cam?
We were talking about this in the office as I was preparing to come on, and Mike Keeney, our managing editor, thought it's the folks who look at their lives and say, I'm doing okay. You know, maybe things could be better, maybe things could be worse. My definition, maybe this is a little too cheeky, but if you got up this morning and went to work, whether you wanted to or not, middle class. And it doesn't matter what you do for a living or how much you make. If you've got to be there doing the job, you know, just doing the work that keeps society going.
And that's certainly
I think
a lot
that's
of
a definition of middle class.
Right, all right. What about, though, that perception, okay, I'm doing okay. Is the middle class doing okay? We've talked about some forces, especially currently here in Hawaii, that are sort of bearing down on the middle class. Can you sort of run through a few of those? Cost of living?
Well, there are a bunch of things. I think the number one thing is the cost of buying a house. If you go back to, say, 1984, the housing price index was at about 40. Today it's at about 180. That's about 4.5 times. That's about 4.5 times larger than it was back then. Even if you adjust for inflation, basically the real cost of housing has about doubled. And so the access of a family to purchase a home has just become much, much less in Hawaii than it previously was. We've had an era of low interest rates that's helped some with the affordability. But I think that really is the number one number one factor that's stressing people. There's also, what economists call skill bias technological change, where the demand for skills is changing. And there's a lot of people who used to have skills that put them in the middle class, and today those skills are not earning them an income sufficient to be in the middle class. We're really just seeing a lot of change there. And so as a society, we're really finding that we need to reorient toward giving people different sets of skills, and that kids need to reorient too, kids and adults need to reorient toward getting a different set of skills. And that's a real big change for Hawaii and for the rest of the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to sort of what we referenced in the intro of small business being sort of the bedrock source of middle class living here in Hawaii. Debbie, you've got a lot of experience with that, owning your own business. What sort of challenges have you seen with sort of the arrival of some of the big boxes, the larger mainland entities here in Hawaii?
Well, some of the things, with Hawaii is that we have one pie. And with a lot of small business, and we talk to a lot of other small business owners, we share information, we kind of share sort of our issues or problems, and how did you overcome certain things. And then when a big box store comes in, all of a sudden the playing field, is no longer level. They have much more capital. They have, they get the choice locations. And of course, it's the increased competition, which competition is healthy. But for a small business, it's that bigger, the pie becomes even smaller. And, recently, a couple of the other challenges for a small business is also, basically we can't compete with the benefits package. It's not only the pool of employee resources. We have a small coffee house, so our workers tend to be, in the 20-something type of age. A lot of them are interested in flexibility and some stability, but they're really interested in having some opportunities to do other things.
And you're speaking specifically of Whole Foods has come to Kailua, and you're competing in terms of coffee, but you're also competing in terms of this large national company that might have resources for personnel that are hard for a small business to compete with.
Oh, it is. We absolutely. We lost a couple of very good employees, and we just couldn't compete. Aside from that is that when Whole Foods did open, they basically have their for Kailua there's a lot of food-oriented businesses. Well, when Whole Foods opened, they have their whole, food service section. And what people, and it's fabulous and it's great, but what we don't realize is our pie, that we're all sharing, the small businesses all sharing, just got smaller. So the slices keep getting sliced, and people say, well, it's just a matter of time. People will come back. Well, sometimes small business can't afford to wait out that year for your numbers to get back up to par after the luxury and the sort of the ambiance of Whole Foods wears off. And that becomes challenging.
And Karen, you were saying that we're actually sort of seeing this also reflected in education in terms of sort of some of the financial hardship or realities that our middle class are going through. You're seeing a drop in enrollment in certain schools. Can you talk to that?
Well, when you look at the trends in private school, we've had over 20% of our students are in private schools. But as we begin to see the tuition rising in private schools, you begin to see less, more students coming back to the DOE. So that would be a trend, and it's not one we don't welcome. We want our students to come back to public schools. But it just is a symptom of what's happening to the families out there.
Interesting. So we're seeing this across the board. Your publication covers a lot of these issues. Do you have a sense that things are getting more challenging? And if so, why?
I do. The feeling of the recession dragging on, I think, is pretty widespread. And certainly, we've all seen housing prices go up, but in particular the cost of energy. I think we pay something like more than 30 cents a kilowatt hour. You might know off the top of your head.
Approximately.
Right, and you know, if you were in Seattle, you're paying 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So
Huge
our electric
difference.
bills are 5 times higher than maybe a comparably sized city on the mainland. And every business, every institution that we all shop at or go to has to raise their prices to pay their electric bills. And then before you know it, everything is just more expensive.
And Debbie, you actually saw this at your business, didn't you, with the electricity?
Oh, we did. You know, it was interesting. You know, we were talking about the fact when oil was at $150 a barrel, you know, our electric bill, you know, skyrocketed. However, now that it's down to around 95, it's still the same. And it's interesting, and I know I'm not sure why that is. And so
Is that a cost you pass on to your customers, or as a small business, are you so concerned about keeping your prices in line? Is it hard with these sort of increases in prices?
well, it's hard. You know, a small business will absorb it much more longer than, you know, a larger business can, or will. You know, we're price sensitive. We're face to face with the customer, so we will hear it. You know, when we raise prices, we'll hear it.
Let's talk about sort of the issue of this perhaps perception that we referred to in the introduction, that some families might feel this pressure or this feeling that private education, if you can do it, you should do it, sort of thing. You were saying, Karen, that this is sort of, there is a reality that this perception does exist in some sense in Hawaii.
Yes, and I'm referring to the book Going Against the Grain, and who the author goes and interviews parents who felt pressure within their job. They reach a certain economic status, and it's expected that their children would be going to private school. And they have said, no, we will keep our children in public school. So we know that there is that pressure. There's also the history and the tradition in Hawaii. But I think what is really important is we're talking about the economics. It's the lack of funding for education. Over the years, we have seen funding drop for schools, and the impact is felt. And so when parents say, I want to give my child the opportunity to a better education, you can't fault that parent. And one example I'm going to give that has happened in the schools over time is that they don't have librarians. They've lost their professional librarians. You have beautiful libraries, but no librarian. We've lost the arts in the school, where your private school is able to give that opportunity. So we really have to look at what is happening to the whole economy and decisions that are made that we need to fund our public schools.
Right. You know, I think if you look back at the last 50 years in Hawaii, if you look at, say, Hawaii at statehood, there were very few college graduates in the state of Hawaii. And during the 60s and 1970s and 1980s, we moved up to a much higher percentage of college graduates. But that's really leveled out a bit. And, you know, if you look at the jobs that are going to be good income earning jobs for people in Hawaii in future years, they're going to require college degrees. That doesn't necessarily mean expansion of the University of Hawaii. It does mean though that really Hawaii policymakers really carefully need to think about how are Hawaii kids going to get more college degrees. Some of that probably will come from the University of Hawaii. Some of it might come from an expansion of the private higher education system here too. I think that's one of the places where Hawaii has a comparative advantage in the future, is expanding the higher education system here. And we really haven't seen that happen as much as I think we'd like, looking back at where we were, say, 20 years ago.
That's an interesting point. I mean, what are some things that we've talked about, some of the problems? What are some substantive changes that can be made to help not only everyone in the state, but specifically the middle class? Any thoughts on that, Kim?
Well, improving education overall would help. And I think to the extent that people feel like a middle class life is harder and harder to come by, then maybe they do feel more pressure than ever to give their kid any advantage they can afford. And if they think an independent school is where they can find that advantage, then the pressure mounts to do so. At the same time, the cost of a private education is harder to pay when the economy is tough. So
and puts further strain.
Yeah, I think families are really squeezed.
Yeah. Now, that brings me to, your magazine has a very highly anticipated ranking issue every year. What would you say to those who feel that perhaps ranking schools can sort of end up being a real negative for those schools that do rank lower? I'm sure you've heard that many times. Any thoughts?
Yes. Well, I've pointed out that the schools themselves are in the business of grading people, and so it seems only fair to hand out some grades ourselves. The source of all our data for the ranking is all official information that the DOE itself gathers. The ranking, to my mind, is not the most important part of that grading the public schools package. I'm much more interested, and I think parents are too, in the scores that we've been providing on parent, teacher, and student satisfaction and how the kids are doing on their math and reading tests. Beyond that, the ranking is just kind of a way to organize 256 schools.
Yes.
And it does give a sense of how schools are doing. And the first time we did the chart, a realtor called me and said, "That sound you hear is property values shifting all over the islands," because he thought people were going to move to neighborhoods to chase the better schools. And I think some of that happens. I think district exemptions maybe get pursued a bit because of what people find in the chart. We do it as a service to our readers and as part of our mission to just pursue accountability for government. It's paid for by our taxes, and nothing is more vital than quality education. So.
And we have a bunch of questions coming in from callers a lot, but before we go to those, Karen, I just want to give you a chance to respond. What would you say to, say, a middle-class family living in an area whose school perhaps is ranked lower in that survey? Perhaps they agree, perhaps they're not having a great experience, but there aren't the financial resources to switch. What are their options? What sort of answers are there for that family?
Their option really is to become involved, to be involved in their schools. And we hope that the report can be an impetus for them to say, I'm going to do something. I was frustrated for many years with the ranking. Oh, here we go again, what are we going to do? And I finally reached a point as I was working with parents in Kalihi, I said, our goal is going to be for my neighborhood school to be the best it can be, to be equal to a private school. And we have to take that attitude. And the students have taken that attitude. I was working with students, Farrington High School, bright students. All parents are immigrants. And I said, what would you say to parents now who are in the elementary school? What would you tell them? And they said, it doesn't matter if you don't speak English. Just be there for your children. Give them the support they need. So whatever school you're at, give them the support.
Absolutely. Let's go to our first question. This is from Lori in IAEA. Is the so-called brain drain partly to blame for the demise of the middle class in Hawaii? Anyone want to take that one? Any thoughts, Sumner?
Yeah, I think that's partly true. Suppose you have somebody who goes to the University of Hawaii, gets a degree, does really well. If they move to the mainland, they're going to. If they include the mainland as part of their job market, they're going to be able to get higher salaries. They're going to be able to get experience quicker. They're going to be placed better. I often recommend to my students that they first start out on the mainland, that they keep their contacts here and they come back. I think those people are extraordinarily successful. There are certain types of jobs that we're just not going to have here. I mean, we have an economy that tends to be very service-oriented. There's lots of jobs in the tourism sector. There's a military-oriented economy. There's a high-tech economy that's coming up that just to service much of the military. If you happen to have skills in those sectors, you can do really well staying here. But if you don't, you actually are better off moving to the mainland. The best thing that we can do with our children is to make sure that they have the proper skills, whether they're going to live here or live on the mainland. That's really the job of the educational system. Trying to structure the state economy so that everybody can stay here is really not. It's a bit of a dream. It'd be nice if we could do it, but it's really not that feasible for a very small state.
So you aren't necessarily saying we must diversify our economy and provide a range of, you're saying the economy is going to naturally be what it's going to be here, and that perhaps people need to be flexible with how they...
Efforts to diversify the economy are useful as long as we do not become obsessed with them. The best thing that we can do for the economy is to provide a solid basis for the economy. is to have a solid tax system. There's still places we could go with the tax system. It's to have a solid public education system and private education system.
Okay.
You know, it's all the basics are the very best thing that we can do, rather than to pay too much attention to diversification per se.
Your tax point leads directly to the next question from Kai and Kaneohe. Would the middle class benefit or be hurt by replacing the current tax code with a simple flat consumption tax? I suppose that would be towards you.
Okay, so I think a simple flat consumption tax is probably going to be very regressive, and it's probably not the thing to do. There's a lot to be said, though, for a 2 or 3 tiered consumption tax. I think that the nice thing about a consumption tax is it emphasizes a tax on consumption, which means that savings is subsidized. One of the problems that we have in Hawaii and in the United States is too low of a savings rate. And with a higher savings rate, there'd be all sorts of national problems, which we could deal with a lot better. Here locally, with a higher savings rate, we would have more capital for investment. And I think a higher savings rate, too, would for the United States, would help us deal with our deficit problems. That's really something here in Hawaii that would be good.
That might be something to look at.
Tax reform would be helpful. One thing I found preparing for this, the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities on the mainland points out that Hawaii is among the worst states in the nation on taxing the working poor, which means there's a tax policy that is keeping people from making that jump into the middle class. It seems ridiculous that we would allow something like that to continue.
All right, well done. Debbie, this seems like a question for you. Hawaii is ranked 49th in U.S. small businesses. How does this impact the middle class business owner? I suppose it's indicative of the same pressures you were talking about.
Yeah, you know, everything that, you know, being an island, having so much of our goods, I mean, everything is brought in by boat. When rates go up, you know, mats and rates go up, everything gets passed down to the small business. And, you know, eventually it's going to, you know, everyone that lives here in Hawaii. And, you know, it is challenging, you know, but then again, you know, it is what it is.
Right, and it's the reality that small business owners compete against every day, I suppose.
Yep.
From Tom and Kamaki, how would raising minimum wage affect the middle class in Hawaii? Any thoughts?
A little bit of increase in minimum wage here wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I don't really think that that's the best way to help. That's the best way to help people at the bottom of the wage distribution. And that's mostly because there's a much more effective policy tool, and that's the Earned Income Tax Credit. The Earned Income Tax Credit is essentially a wage subsidy paid out by employers. There's 29 states that have it. It's proved highly effective in those states. It has all sorts of other pluses. Our legislature hasn't been too positively disposed toward it. Most of the battle has been over minimum wage. I wish the emphasis would switch to the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Karen, any thoughts on that?
FACE has worked to raise the minimum wage, and we nearly got it this session, and we lost it. So in talking to friends, I asked the same question: will it help the middle class? And the answer was no, it will not help the middle class. But when we talk about the people at the lowest rung, it will help them, and we do need to raise that.
All right. I'm not sure of the answer to this question. Do you think yesterday's ruling regarding same-sex marriage strengthens Hawaii's middle class? Any thoughts on that? Is there any correlation?
To the extent that when people think what is middle class, right? I mean, you think of a married couple, suburban house, white picket fence, a couple of kids and a dog, and you know all of that. There's this whole package of things that don't necessarily immediately have anything to do with money. It's a way of life. So if the ruling leads to more couples feeling more stable, and that stability is a crucial aspect of being middle class, then sure.
And if there are increased tax benefits or sort of federal benefits available, I suppose, then that might support certain households.
It's certainly worth remembering, too, that
Yeah.
we don't have same-sex marriage here in Hawaii. So that the ruling for us is interesting, and it's a wonderful ruling, I think. It will help in those states that have same-sex marriage to increase the stability of those families. That's a good thing whether they're in that's a good thing whether in the upper class, lower class, middle class. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
It'll be generally a good thing, but we don't have same-sex marriage
Right.
here. So in some ways, that I think is really an impetus once again for policymakers to take a look at that. That is the type of stuff that stabilizes families, and that leads to a strong middle class.
Right, and of course with this ruling there might be increased political pressure to get same-sex marriage.
Yes.
Right. All right, let's move on to sort of some other points that have been asked. Karen, We're talking about sort of the financial challenges for the middle class, the increased sort of pressure. That, of course, is going to move some children into more financially challenged situations in homes. Do those children face a tougher road in terms of getting an education and a job afterward?
Definitely. It's the cost of higher education. We have, the last report said that we had more students, going to college after high school graduation. But our graduation rate is not very good. But also the families are struggling to send their children to college because of the high cost of tuition. And in their income level, trying to qualify, there's not as many, I think, loans or scholarships that are really available for the parents. So what the students are doing is working more jobs. They're not full-time students. So I think that really impacts their future.
Right.
I agree. I attended UH in the late 80s. I graduated in 92. And in real dollars, UH is about 5 times more expensive now than it was when I went. I don't know if it's 5 times better. Maybe it is. I don't know. But it is definitely 5 times more expensive. And local families have to confront that.
And it's still cheaper than going to the
It is
mainland.
still, yes, it's still a bargain
it's still a
at 5
bargain,
times higher.
yes.
But
It's $9,000, for an approximately for an in-state student to attend UH for a year. That's much greater than it was before you.
Sure.
You're exactly right. The state during the 1990s. The 1990s, of course, was the lost decade for the Hawaii economy.
Right.
Well, the mainland economy boomed. The Hawaii economy did not. And there was a tremendous cutback in the expenditures that the state devoted towards UH. And as a result, UH was given permission to raise tuition. Essentially, those tuition increases have just matched the cuts in expenditures by the state. So this is a case where the state has made a conscious decision to support UH less and to move into other types of services. And in response, UH has raised tuition. That has led to some pressure on families, though.
Sure. This is from Tom in Hilo. The state of Hawaii spends more per pupil than the rest of the country, and we have the second highest taxes, but the panel is not mentioning this despite it being bad for business. I think we have touched actually on taxes and the feeling.
There's a real big difference in our tax structure here. On the mainland, it is property taxes that pays for the schools. Here, it's a state tax, and so we forget that it's a different type of system.
Understand. And I think he is touching on something that we probably should talk about a little bit more. This is a highly taxed state. Is there room for further increases to in some way help the middle class, or do we need to go another way? I mean, there's been talk about, do we need to sort of tax pensions of wealthy seniors? Do we need to end tax preferences for capital gains? What can we do tax-wise to help the middle class? Any thoughts?
Well, clearly there's room for more reform in the state tax code. The governor, put forth a couple years ago a tax on relatively wealthy seniors with pension income. That tax was not well received. It's still something that most economists that have reviewed it say that there's really no reason to be not taxing any of that income. It's something that we should slowly move toward taxing some of that income. That would help to take some of the pressure, perhaps, off of people in lower incomes.
What about some other taxes that have been thrown out as taxing internet sales, hard liquor, sugary beverages? Of course, those taxes are going to go to the middle class as well, right? So do any of those help in any sense? Any thoughts?
well, my gut instinct is that every tax you add on something that people can buy just raises the cost of that thing. And so the consumer ultimately is the person who gets taxed. So they all end up becoming tax hikes for the middle class.
Debbie, do you see that in your business in terms of taxes?
Oh yes, it's hard because we get taxed. Our rent is everything we pay, and the tax is layered and layered. So sometimes when people come from the mainland, they say, "Oh wow, it's only 4.7% tax. We pay a sales tax of 8% or 10%." Well, they don't also realize that we're taxed on so many different levels that it's somewhat hidden. And ultimately, it is the people of Hawaii that's paying for it, whether we realize it or not. That's, for a small business, that's part of our cost.
I mean, not everything needs to be evaluated in the sense of how is it going to affect the middle class.
Sure.
I mean, if we're looking at things like internet taxes, If you go into say Macy's, you're going to pay 4.7%
Right.
when you purchase a shirt. If you buy it on the internet, you do it appropriately, that tax can sometimes be evaded, and so one must ask, why is that? Why is it that when you buy something on the internet that it's going to be different? There's going to be a different tax when you purchase it in a store, and there's much to be said to have the same tax across the board and to have it be a relatively low tax. That's certainly one of the virtues of the Hawaii excise tax system, is that it taxes services as well as goods and keeps the rate relatively low. The pyramiding is something that the tax code should try to avoid. That's something that the legislature struggles with, is to try to figure out exactly what is appropriate pyramiding not to include
Right.
in the taxes.
And that it applies to food and medicine and things like that,
Right.
right? That seems counterproductive, right? Those everybody needs to eat and get their prescriptions filled. If your income is at the lower end of things,
There's a simple way to deal with that, and the simple way to deal with that is still to charge everybody the across the board flat tax, but to refund some of that back on the income tax. That's the way it used to be in the state of Hawaii. The state legislators have chose to eliminate that tax exemption for low-income families. That's too bad, because I still think, for example, on the 4% tax on food, there's no reason why an upper-income family shouldn't be paying the 4% tax on food or clothing. It's just that when we look at those taxes, they should be refunded, I think, back to lower-income families.
And
Low-income
would you
families, people in the lower middle class, those people should get some of those taxes back.
Because the excise tax is very regressive for our families.
All right. That touches on an interesting point, which is, the government does have a variety, and deservedly so, a variety of programs to help people in sort of the lower income brackets. Do you think there's enough being done from the government perspective for the middle class? Do they end up getting squeezed sort of between the advantages of sort of your upper income and the programs for lower income? Any thoughts?
It's when it comes to health care. I think that's where the middle class, where they don't qualify and they have to pay out of their own pocket for health care. And that's what we see in the schools, because students cannot go on field trips unless they have health care. And so if they're a certain group, they get the Medicaid, they get the MedQuest, but there are kids who don't, and then the parents say, why can't I get it? And that's when you really feel it.
That's interesting.
Right. On the other hand, most of the middle class families in the state, actually have health care, and that's partly because of the Prepaid Health Care Act, where if there's a person in the family working more than 20 hours a week, the employer has to provide the health care. We have a very high rate of health insurance. I think this applies more to your lower middle class or people who are from families in poverty. For the middle class, the tax exemption is still really quite a large benefit that isn't even included in the monetary income of the middle class. Although it's easy to complain about how costly healthcare is, the quality of healthcare has improved somewhat over time. The Obamacare reforms, I think, are relatively good reforms, but there's a large tax subsidy paid to people in the middle class that actually is a subsidy that comes from other income groups.
the mortgage interest deduction is
Mortgage
also
interest
a
deduction,
break that
too.
helps the middle class.
Right.
Home ownership is a key component of that. So.
All advantages. Just talking about health care, Debbie, you've got to see that in small business, or in terms of the importance of health care and the cost, right?
Oh yes, it's one of those things where it makes it challenging, for small business to, and you want to provide as much as you can, but with a small business, it's just absorbing all of that. It gets, it's going to get passed down to our pricing, and we can't price ourselves out of what we serve.
Right. There's
That's
nowhere
just
to
what it
go.
is. Right.
A few viewers are asking for a restatement of sort of a median income, and I think what we established at the top of the show was, depending on family size, somewhere between 60 and 80, depending whether you're a family of 3 or 4, in terms of a median income in Hawaii, correct?
Right. So I think the figures that I put out of a little over 60. Right, that's essentially just for your median. That's your median household income
Right.
in Hawaii. It's not so much
And then
standardized for the family of 4. For the
four,
family of 4, it's
it
higher.
Goes up. All right. Let's go through. We've got a lot of questions here. All right, this is a statement more than anything. Phoebe from Kaimuki, I grew up with baby boomer parents and we lived very comfortably. I am terrified. I am in my late 20s. I work a respectable job, but I do not know how I will ever buy a house or raise a family comfortably. It's hard to hear those things and not sort of feel the struggle of that. And I guess that gets back to, what are the answers? Any more thoughts? We've talked about taxes. Any other thoughts on answers for people in that situation?
earn more. And that's very hard because salaries, and we have the highest cost of living in America, and we make up for it with the lowest salaries.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the brain drain or sort of the middle class drain comes from, is that people start to feel squeezed out and that the only option is to move somewhere with a lower cost of living or lower housing prices.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that the cost of housing has gone up above and beyond inflation, right? So what someone could buy with one salary in the late 60s to live in a modest single-family home, single-wall construction, nothing fancy.
Right.
Now it takes 4 people at an
Right.
average salary to buy that same house.
And it's going to keep going up.
Right. So, you know, you live with your parents longer than you might like,
Yeah.
or longer than they might like,
Right.
or you get married later.
Right.
People find a lot of ways to get around it. I think it is getting harder, and we appear to be on the cusp of another big spike in real estate values, where if you already own, you probably feel really lucky and smart. And if you don't own yet and think you want to, it may get really difficult in
Really
the next
hard.
few years.
All right. What about, is the decline of organized labor contributing to the decline of Hawaii's middle class? From Michael on Kauai. Any thoughts on that? Labor, you've certainly represented labor. Any thoughts?
And as you look at the trends, if you have a union job, your income is going to be higher. And so because you have a group that's advocating for you, so it is very important that we continue to have unions here in Hawaii. We can't lose them.
Any other thoughts before I leave that topic and we go on to the next question?
We've definitely had a loss of certain industries that traditionally had union labor, and the sugar industry is one of the biggest ones. You know, that was unionized. That was unionized workers. A lot of those jobs. Those were relatively good jobs, and those disappeared in the 1970s and 1980s. Certainly, we're just finding that there's less and less unionization in Hawaii. That does have that is a factor that previously helped to keep wages up.
Yeah.
I don't think, though, that that's the main factor that's impinging on the middle class. I think it is much more of the skill bias technological change. Just that there's a lot of jobs in the middle of the income spectrum that just are being eliminated.
Yeah. And of course, the cost of housing, which leads to our next question. Is it correct that of all the states, Hawaii has the highest ratio of renters versus owners, and one of the biggest disparities between the high cost of living and low average annual income? From Cheryl in Kapahulu. Cam, I believe that...
I did look up some things here that certainly our rate of home ownership is lower than the national average. And you know, that gets to those issues of middle class stability. What was the other part of that?
In terms of the ratio, we've got the renters to owners, as well as the disparity between high cost of living and low average annual income.
Right. There was another measure of housing affordability I found online that took a look at how many years it would take to pay for the average house with the average salary in a given city. And in some mid-sized city in Indiana, you could pay for the average house with the average salary in 1.5 years. And in Honolulu, it's 9 years. And that was the most expensive city. It was more expensive by that measure than San Francisco. So
The median home value here is approximately $630,000
Right. And climbing.
on Oahu, and climbing. And the median family, your median household can't afford that. That's really simple.
right.
So with all of this somewhat depressing news, Glenn in Kahalu has a question. So what can or should we do to keep our middle class alive? Is there a magic bullet?
I would come back to education.
Okay.
It's really important that we have quality
We
education.
both agree on that. Okay.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, but I think what we're seeing is that some jobs that people traditionally were paid pretty good wages for, whether we're talking about foremen, whether we're talking about benefits managers, whether we're talking about people who kept payroll bookkeeping, a lot of those jobs now are just being done by computer. We're finding that inventory, those jobs are associated with inventory previously. Now there's a swipe, and the inventory is pretty much done. You know,
And of course-
and so with many of those jobs were in the middle of the income spectrum. That's the middle class,
Right.
and so those are now being done. Those are now being done by computer. You can see it too when you check out at Long's. That When you go there, there's fewer cashiers, there's more self-service, there's more self-service aisles.
And there's also outsourcing of jobs. And so when you look at hospitals, you know, as they're outsourcing jobs, those people are losing their jobs here in Hawaii.
Right. So some of the trick though is that in order for people to stay here, what they really need to ask is what types of skills are going to be needed here by the firms of the future. And that's the critical thing, really, I think, for people in school to think a little bit about. It's great to get a general education. I'm a big fan of students getting a good general education that really serves you throughout life in all sorts of ways. But it's also useful to ask where are the jobs going to be in Hawaii. And again, there's a very simple point. Being a college graduate and paying some attention to the courses, to the mix of courses you take, is just one of the most critical things that you can do. And that's a place where we're still lagging a bit at the University of Hawaii, for example. We could do better. And I know the University of Hawaii has a big campaign in place to try to increase the four-year graduation rate. We're lagging nationally, and we're really concerned that we do better in that particular area. That's not just the University of Hawaii doing better, it's also the students, their families.
Right, across the board.
Across the board, yeah.
We've talked on food a few times in this conversation. Let's focus on it for a second. A family of 4 pays 60% more for groceries here than parts of the mainland. That's hard to overcome. Debbie, you've got an interest in agriculture. Do you think part of that could be solved with more local agriculture, the price of shipping that food in, et cetera? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. I think there's, obviously there's been a big push for more local agriculture. I mean, across the country, you look around, everybody is trying to buy from their local farmers, and it does. I think our food supply that I read somewhere, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it's something like we have maybe 3 or 4 days of food on island at any given time, right? Something it's and if you think about that, that's a bit scary, If something should happen, what happens to us, to Hawaii? So, I think that's part of the reason I think more and more people are wanting to also know where their food is coming from and more control. And I think I think you have a lot of younger people interested in agriculture that, that little bit more of a passion, a little bit more of a lifestyle. And I think that might be a sector, I don't know what at UH, with CTAR of possibilities. Including some of the other things that come with the apiary. I think the governor has appointed a specialist just for bees, and that was another venue of revenue, I believe. The queen bees, until we had some of the bee mites and some of the things that have affected the bee population here. But I think there could be some opportunities there. Coming, in the younger generation coming through Hawaii.
For
agriculture. Or even looking, I grew up on a plantation. Mm-hmm. And so when we had a strike, my father went on a strike, he was growing cabbage. The fishermen went and got fish. And so we were fed, we had food. But when the teachers went on strike in 2001, I worried because you don't have that food in your backyard. You don't have the chickens. So that change in lifestyle has impacted, the future for our people here. So if we go back to the gardening, if we go back to the farming, I think that will help people to be a little more secure in obtaining their food.
I look at local food as being fresher and better. I try to buy it whenever I can. I see all sorts of people moving in that direction, but I'm not sure it's going to be less expensive. I mean, I think it's one of those things that if we're really looking for decreases in cost from that, I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. I do think we need to worry about our agricultural capacity. That is something that we shouldn't let just become a very small amount. But I think there is that trend toward people wanting local food, and that we should try to be encouraging. More agricultural farms. But, it's not as if right now there's lots of land available. It's not as if there's not land available for farming. If people wanted to start farms, they could. It is the type of thing where the state really needs to make sure that it's not putting regulatory barriers in the way of the farmers, and that we do what we can to help the farmers. One obstacle to this, I think, is the Jones Act. We ought to be looking for not necessarily elimination of the Jones Act. I think people are often they're very polarized in this. The Jones Act, which essentially requires that things which are shipped to Hawaii be shipped on American ships with American crews that have American flags, meaning that they follow all U.S. regulations with shipping, but we ought to be trying for some experiments Because if we could lower the cost of that shipping, that would also help to bring in agricultural supplies. So things like a dairy industry here is really hurt by that high cost of shipping. If we had a little lower cost of shipping, I think we'd have a stronger, more vibrant dairy industry here, for example. We need to be thinking about some of those things.
So the Jones Act, that could help. That could be something.
The Jones Act is something we ought to think about experimenting with. I mean, just saying getting rid of it isn't turning out to be a policy.
But we like any
possibility.
possible solution, so let's put it on the table. All right, from Bernard in Waimanalo. Because Hawaii is isolated and dealing with the strain of overpopulation and declining infrastructure, is that what is killing our middle class? Overpopulation, infrastructure, are those things that we are also having to factor in? Any thoughts?
Overpopulation, I just in the news with what's going to happen in Kaka'ako, how many more buildings? I'm just curious. I don't know what that's going to do, but then again, that's I think there was something slated like 20 new buildings coming up.
And of course, is that going to help the middle class because are there going to be, with more inventory, more opportunities? I guess it's a question of how many luxury units versus affordable.
Well, there are laws that require developers to provide a certain amount of not affordable housing, right? The non-luxury housing. And one of the reasons prices are shooting up right now is that there is very little inventory. There's hardly anything to buy on the market right now and very little new construction. So the new construction in Kaka'ako could help take some pressure off that. We have such complicated feelings in Hawaii about development. Everybody would like their own place to live, and everyone would like their kids to stay, but no one wants to let anyone else build anything. We want to keep the country, so we can't build suburbs, and we don't want Honolulu to turn into Hong Kong with all these skyscrapers, and we just can't have it all, or reject all of it. So something has got to give on these conflicting things that we go through about, people are got to live somewhere.
Sure, of course,
So
but that
where?
also gets
Where are we
back
gonna
to
put
the
them?
issue of agriculture and keeping land open to do it, right? There's all these competing needs in this relatively
Right, we
very
want
small
to preserve
space.
ag land.
Yeah.
And
Do you think infrastructure is an issue that
I think it's a big issue here, and I think it's something. I think it's something the state is moving. The state and the city are moving to rectify. We let the sewer system and the road system on the island of Oahu really run down. State spending on infrastructure really declined in the 1990s and the early 2000s, and part of that was because the economy did so poorly. In reaction to the economy doing poorly, we really cut back on infrastructure spending, and it shows. And now we're spending more on infrastructure, but we have much less infrastructure per person than we had at an earlier period. That's really too bad. I mean, I think it's something that the amount of infrastructure that you have does determine your productivity. We see it in the transportation system of people's difficulties in getting around in Hawaii, regardless of what the solution is, whether it's whether it's the train or whether it's expanded other opportunities in transportation. We have desperately needed more infrastructure spending in that area. We're moving in that direction. That's a really good thing for the state. That's going to help us in the future.
and will be positive. This question is specifically for Karen from Michelle from Laupahoehoe. What is Hawaii doing to create more scholarships or aid for students going to UH? I know that is a big question. I guess what is sort of touching on is our earlier discussion about sort of people need, perhaps people falling out of the middle class, having more financial need. Any thought on that, on the importance of scholarships and whether we're going to see more?
Well, one of the things I found out from parents is that they were not aware of what scholarships were out there. And as I talk to parents and then talk to the schools, many times we don't have enough counselors at the school level to advise the students about the scholarships that are out there and to help them to fill out the forms. So, there are scholarships, but how can kids access them? And how can they get them filled out so they can use the money?
And go and look for those.
And at one time, we also had a lot more government money that went into scholarship. And we also have to talk about Pell Grants and the interest rates. So there are things government can do to help.
That can be done. All right, from Keith in Manoa, what is the average personal debt in Hawaii and how does it compare to the national average? Any thoughts on that, debt here in Hawaii? You were referencing in taxes how if we restructured some taxes, we might encourage savings. So I suppose that touches back to that.
Our debt tends to be higher just because we take out big mortgages.
And cost
to
of
buy
living,
homes.
yeah,
I
right,
mean, it's
sure.
It's really just that simple. We've been paying down our credit card debt lately. I mean, this is one of these things. In the very slow recovery to the recession. And of course, that's one of the things really to keep in mind here is just that the economy has recovered very slowly. This mirrors the nationwide relatively slow recovery. And that's kind of in the background of all of this discussion is that, in some sense, the middle class and just all of the economy, people have a dream that they can be better off. And there's whole areas where we're still not back to where we were in 2007.
Right. That was one of my questions, this feeling of things are getting sort of worse and worse for the middle class. Do we need to sort of sit tight and as this economy does slowly recover, is it going to get better or are we unfortunately going to meet up with these higher housing prices that we're expecting and whatever recovery the middle class feels will get sort of negated by that? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Through this recession, Hawaii has actually done better than many other states. Our unemployment is better, and our housing values didn't crash the way, say, Las Vegas did. So if you owned a home, all that equity was protected. We actually had some advantages this time out. But certainly, if housing gets more expensive, it can be a huge problem. I found an article researching for this from the mainland that said the high cost of living and doing business in Hawaii has residents here worried that their Pacific outpost will become less of a home and more of a vacation destination as prices continue to drive away the middle class. That article was written in 1991.
So this is not a new
It's
issue.
not new, it's
Right.
cyclical. And of course 1991 was the end of that last spike,
is really
right?
worth
When home
remembering, too.
values doubled from 86 to 90.
Sorry. It's really worth remembering, too, that 55% of households here own homes.
Right.
Okay, now let's just lop off that top 20%. And that would mean of the remaining 80% of the households here, 35% own homes. Those people who own homes are not in such bad shape right now.
Right.
I mean, if you had purchased a home in the year 2000, there were tremendous gains in the price of homes during the decade of the 2000s. Yes, they fell a bit at the end of the 2000s, but we're right back up to where we were now and where we were previously in 2007, right near the height. So many of those middle-class families have done really well. I mean, there's really is, even in the middle class, there's a little bit of have and have-nots, where you have some people who own the homes and have bought at just the right time. There's others who don't own the homes and are kind of looking at how do I get into this really
And of course,
really high price structure.
They're also a bit of a conundrum in that even if your home here is worth a lot of money, where are you going to go after you sell, right? You're going to have to go and find, unless you're moving
Vegas,
out.
of course.
The perennial answer, right? All right, this is from Bill in Kaimuki, either for the professor or the coffee house owner. Why can't salaries be higher in Hawaii? Debbie, let's start with you. Any thoughts on that?
Gosh, for a small business, it's challenging. As a small business owner, you want to pay as much as you can and to keep your good employees. The challenge is that our costs continually go up. The rents are high for small business owners, so our rents are high. Our utilities are high. We've got payroll taxes, and it's sort of not just the face value of the dollars per hour, but there's a lot of hidden costs. And then again, your refrigeration goes out. You're calling someone to repair it, an emergency repair.
And that all
It
keeps wages where they are because there's not a lot of extra. Huh?
There's not a lot of extra. So I think that's the challenge for a small business.
I understand. We're about down to 2 minutes, so I want to make sure we get these final questions in. From Ken in Waikiki, would raising taxes on large corporations, which have greater economies of scale, and lowering taxes on small businesses strengthen our middle class? Is that a feasible solution, Sumner?
Looking at the way that we tax corporate income here is something that we ought to be looking at much more closely. This is a place where hopefully the federal government will do some tax reform in how they tax corporations. It badly needs reform, and the same thing here in Hawaii.
What would you do if you could?
Well, I mean, the whole system right now is essentially a giveaway system where corporations have gone in and gotten special benefits. The code is just riddled with inefficiencies. There are all these tax credits that have very little relationship to the actual gains that corporations get. It's really become just a big game for corporations to get these tax credits. We desperately need a total review of the way that we tax corporate income in the United States and in Hawaii.
So is that something that we could solve on a state level versus having to wait for the federal government to do it?
It's always best when that kind of thing can be coordinated. You don't really want the two tax systems to become too far away from each other.
All right. This comment comes from Kahului. Consider raising the minimum wage, which will bring in more taxes and generate more jobs, give the middle class a break. Of course, understandably, how someone would feel that way, but we had spoken earlier, you don't feel that a minimum wage hike, while it is valuable, would necessarily help the middle class. Is that correct,
Not so
Karen?
much the middle class, it's more for the people who are at the low end of the wage scale, that it would help them, and it is important.
Right. Any final thoughts on that issue?
No, I'm still a big fan of the earned income tax, of the earned income credit. That's a great way to help people there. It's just a much better tool.
All right, really quickly, in our final few seconds, if you could do one thing to change things for the middle class, what would be your top priority? Very quickly.
Ooh,
Just taxes?
that's a really hard one. But I'd be looking carefully at the tax system in
All
Hawaii
right.
because there's possibilities for gains there.
In a few words, if there was one thing that could help you in your business.
Again, it's gonna be taxes. I think that would help.
All right.
Some sort of tax reform.
Cam, any thoughts?
I'd like to see Hawaii become more of an opportunity-oriented society.
All right, Karen, really quickly, and then we're
Better
wrapping up.
funding for education.
All right, it
and
all
I
comes
want
back
our
to the-
parents to become engaged in their schools.
All right, a very positive message. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Very important topic. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Next week, Insights will be taking the week off on July 11th in the wake of Edward Snowden's allegations that the National Security Agency and Central Intelligence Agency have been conducting mass surveillance programs. Insights will ask the question, are we losing our right to privacy? And if so, are we comfortable balancing those intrusions with a perceived sense of security? That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Malia Maddock. A hui hou.